My first interaction with Calyrex was at Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. We were all looking at the new Pokemon for this region, and someone showed a picture of Calyrex, and I was so convinced that that was someone's Fakemon that when I actually saw videos of Calyrex in the game, I was stunned. I didn't want to think it was real. It is a disturbing little guy. I don't understand his big old bulbous head, and frankly his weird little anime legs and his hyper-realistic face. I don't really get it. I think he is a bit scary, because he is also the size of a human child. So I have decided to redesign it. I have made 3 designs. So the redesign is taking aspects of Calyrex that are already there and just making it a little bit different. Full redesign, I am not sticking to anything. I am taking in mind his name and maybe a little Pokemon lore, and that's it. And a redesign, but I make it worse. I don't know, I just emphasize the aspects of the design that I dislike fully. In the first redesign, I was kind of inspired by a jackalope. I wanted the bulb on his head to stop looking the way it does. Calyrex is also a psychic type Pokemon, and I think that having this massive head makes it scary. It makes it look like this is his big old brain, and I don't like it. With the body, I wanted the body to look a little bit more animalistic. It feels like they're going for a bit more of a human design, and I kind of wanted to take that away. This is supposed to be a rabbit ? So I wanted it to look a little bit more like a rabbit. I also tried to soften the facial features just a little bit because he has a very intense stare, which I can understand for like a king, but I don't love the hyper-realistic little face on this tiny little body. And then the collar. I liked the idea of this guy being like a budding flower king. I wanted it to be more full. I wanted it to look more like a neckruffle. So I kind of have the flowers actually blooming outwards. For his cape, I wanted it to be more obviously like a king's like big old fancy cloak. Calyrex floats in the game, so I wanted to think about how this like fairy king Pokemon would move. Like it should look like the wings. Like I know what's going on here. These are trying to resemble wings, but I want them to maybe look like wings, but just like dragging behind, more ethereal, more whimsy. And then I just go ahead and clean up the line art, and then we get onto coloring. I wanted the legs to look more like part of his body and not just a pair of socks he's got on. And then I know that Pokemon has like this very painterly style, which I enjoy line art a little too hard, so I was trying to make up for that a little bit with the shading, but blah, 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 blah. So this is the first Calyrex redesign. I wanted him to look more cutesy, a little bit more like a king, maybe a little bit more like a jackalope. It's not really a England mythological creature, but we're gonna ignore that because that's where my brain went. Anyway, the next design. So for the full redesign, I was thinking like, what would a flower rabbit fairy king look like? And so I wanted to design a cape that looked like flowers. So the top half is like a rose and the bottom half is a little bit more like a morning glory. I wanted to give him those like cool elf eyebrows, but they're also the horns, sort of still keeping in line with the jackalope. Also adding that neck ruffle, but instead of it being a lot of flowers, it's just one big flower. I stuck with basically the same color palette of that like blue and green and kind of like cream beige. And then I was thinking, if this is supposed to be like a legendary creature and it's supposed to be like a fairy king Pokemon, he can have little magical wings. That can happen. I think it would be cute. And then that was the full redesign. I think that, I don't know, I like the idea of the fairy Pokemon king. He doesn't need a big old bulbous head. That's where kind of like the eyebrows come in. They're a little bit like one of those big eyebrow elves, and also a little bit like the Legolas dad crown. Excuse me, I don't remember his name, I'm sorry. And then we're gonna go on to the final redesign. The redesign, but it's worse. I made his legs longer because he just needs them to be longer, and I really wanted to emphasize how he is a psychic Pokemon, so I made his crown more like a big old brain, and then I just kind of removed the prongs because they weren't necessary. The brain is the important part. And then I sort of added a skeletal structure to like give you an idea of how this thing kind of moves. So those legs, that's just one long bone. His knees are actually up here. Here's his skull. It kind of extends upward, but only as a skin. So it's like a big old brain and then skin. It can't house the brain, and the brain keeps getting bigger, so it can't have a skeleton over it. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's the redesign, but worse. Yeah. I am Calyrex's #1 hater. Still, Jesus Christ, what is that? Alright, bye.